Okay, thank you everyone for joining the webinar. Sorry we're a few minutes late, and thank you for your patience as we're trying to get organized here. Today's webinar is on learning to fish, preparing your facilitators to leverage Caterpillar's continuous improvement model. My name is Rachel Proper. I'm a communications rep for Caterpillar Safety Services, and I'm actually filling in for Abby Rhodes today. I'll be facilitating the event. Just a couple of quick announcements. The phone lines are muted, so please submit any questions that you have to the presenter through WebEx. Either through the chat area or the Q&A is perfectly fine. We will use the final 10 to 15 minutes to open it up for any Q&A. At that time, we will keep the phone lines muted just to reduce any background noise and problems with phone lines, so those questions will need to be submitted through WebEx. And also, just please know that this event is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent in a follow-up email today, including the slide presentation and audio. So it will all be sent in an email, posted on safety.cat.com, and the follow-up email will also include just a brief survey that we ask for you to please fill out. Now today I'm honored to introduce today's presenter, who is Todd Efird. He's one of our senior safety consultants with Caterpillar Safety Services. He's a certified safety professional with more than 23 years of experience in key safety leadership roles. He is a professional member of the American Society of Safety Engineers and holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from Louisiana Tech University. Also on the line today are a few employees from Snohomish Public Utility District, an Everett, Washington-based company that has leveraged Caterpillar's zero-incident performance process since 2009. So today we currently have on the phone Greg Milne and Stephanie Strom, and a little bit later we'll have David Underwood and Cynthia Stewart on the line as well. So Todd, if you want to go ahead and kick it off.
Good morning, everybody. It's an exciting and a unique opportunity when an organization wants to internalize the continuous improvement process. What I'd like for us to do today is sort of walk through the journey a little bit, and I'm going to give you a high-level overview of what it takes and what the steps are to internalize the process. But I want to leave plenty of time for the participants out at Snohomish to talk about their personal story and how they use the process to internalize it and how they're facilitating CI teams. So let me start with the high-level overview, which will be a couple more slides there. Okay, so we're going to start with the ZIP process, which is Zero Incident Performance Process. Then I want to talk a little bit about the train-the-trainer description, what that looks like, and then we'll have time for Snohomish to talk about their case study. So the ZIP process wheel, Zero Incident Performance Process, has several steps. And if you look at the wheel, the first step is to engage leadership. Then we assess the culture, and there are quite a few ways to do that. The Safety Perception Survey is the tool that Snohomish used to assess their culture. Then we build some of the processes, and we'll talk about what some of those steps are. You notice that develop is highlighted, and develop is where the train-the-trainer event falls. But I do want to point out to you that we don't recommend doing a train-the-trainer event in the development phase of the first round of the cycle. So as you will see and hear from the Snohomish example, they ran several continuous improvement teams with CAT facilitators learning how to do that and understanding the concepts of the continuous improvement and safety process of the ZIP wheel before they decided to internalize it. And I'll let them tell that story when we get there. Once you develop, then you implement, which is the next box, then check, and then you're ready to assess. And we'll walk through all those steps with the example in a few moments. So the train-the-trainer process has multiple steps here. Step one, which is 3 to 5 days long, and the reason there's a window in there is it depends on how many facilitators you are training. The fewer that you have, the closer you get to being able to do that in 3 days, and then of course the more you have 5 days. We've done as many as 12 in a week. That takes 5 days. We've done as few as 2 in a week, and that takes 3 days. And so in step one, you train the new facilitators in the CI materials, CI being continuous improvement, then deliver the materials and demonstrate facilitation skills of those models. Then the new facilitators get a chance to practice delivering the training modules, and then observers in the room provide positive and constructive feedback during the week regarding those skills and the delivery from the facilitators. Step 2 is typically 3 to 4 days. After that first week of training for facilitators, we recommend that they observe a Caterpillar facilitator lead a CI team with their notes so that they can actually see what they just learned in practice. Then step 3 involves a handoff where we would take part of that, or a CAT facilitator would take part of that role that week for the Rapid Improvement Workshop, and the internal facilitator or facilitators would take the other part of that, and so it's a shared event. And then the last step is to have the internal facilitator or facilitators, if you decide to have two, run through that week by themselves with a CAT facilitator present. So I called it a 90-10. What we saw at Snohomish is they needed very little coaching at that point. The facilitators are prepared and ready to do it without much help from us, and the handoff is complete. We're going to spend the majority of our time today talking about step 1 in that process. Now, I encourage you to ask questions at the end of the Snohomish people on the phone as they talk about how they did step 2, 3, and 4. But we're going to focus on step 1 today. So let's move into objectives. So the objectives here are to train the facilitators in the materials, deliver the materials, they get a chance to practice, and then, as we said, provide some feedback. The agenda for that day looks like this. Day 1, we talk about what facilitators need to know to facilitate these teams. And I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide about what that consists of, what that agenda is. Day 2, questions and answers, key areas of concern, any areas that they had questions about. Then we review the facilitator toolkits, and I'll talk to you about what processes are in that toolkit and what functions, what types of materials that the facilitators get and how they use them and what they look like. Some of them are hard copy, some of them are electronic. And then the Snohomish facilitators developed and presented, and then we get feedback from observers. Day 3, for Snohomish were questions and answers, key areas of concern. We go back through and give feedback on the other parts as they deliver, and then final thoughts and adjourn. The last one we did with the Snohomish folks, they had 2. The very first train the trainer, they had 4 participants. So I'll let them talk about that and the different experiences towards the end. So the next slide is, what does day 1 consist of? Welcome and introductions, and these are the key pieces that a facilitator needs to know to set the tone for a group of employees that are about to engage in improving a safety process. And so where we start is what's important to the organization. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what these pieces are, but I want you to understand that they connect to each other and that there are certain cultural functions that the participants need to know so that they're calibrated to go through this week and be successful. We talk about insights into effective safety cultures, the role of safety accountability, the safety perception survey, what are the steps of the ZIP process, which you saw in the wheel earlier, team effectiveness and tools, what makes an effective team and what kinds of tools are we going to use to problem solve. And then launching the project. What does good look like? If their subject is safety meetings, well, what does a good safety meeting consist of? How are we going to measure the quality of our safety meetings, not just the quantity? And then identify current state and then a POP statement. So some of these key cultural pieces that we use in day 1 are the 6 criteria for safety excellence. And these are fundamental principles that we use with any continuous improvement team that is looking to move that process to the next level. These are foundational principles that when we look at our customer base over the last 20 years of research and delivery, these are the principles that the very best organizations have in common. It's not that there's one right way to do it, but the companies who've done the very best and sustained that result over time have these 6 characteristics, and they are top management being visibly committed. The second one, middle management, is actively involved. Frontline supervisors are performance-focused, and that means quality performance of their safety activities. Employees are actively participating, and so this is where you would involve them in continuous improvement teams and building the processes versus actively participating in something that someone else built. The system is flexible, which is the fifth one, so there's no two cultures that are exactly alike. And even within a culture, as the Snohomish group will tell you, they have subcultures that are different. The linemen are a little different than customer service. They act and behave differently. Their subculture looks and feels different. So you want to be flexible to accommodate the group that you're talking about. And then finally, the safety system must be perceived as positive. The next key step that we use as a training tool for internal facilitators is the accountability model. Every team must end up with all 4 steps of the accountability model being touched. And the first one is to define the activities that are needed to be done to improve the process and connect those activities from the newest hire to the CEO. The second step in the model is to train. And so training means what kind of training do people need and at which level to engage in their defined activities in a quality way. Once we've done that, we've earned the right to measure, and we want to measure whether the activities are done and the results. We want to measure the quality of that activity, and we want to set up our measurement systems with the spirit of catching people doing things right, so that it's perceived as positive. I want to know which supervisors and foremen are conducting the very best quality safety activities, not just who turned in the sign-up sheets to the safety department. It's a different level of sophistication. And when I catch those people who are doing things well in a positive way, I want to recognize their performance, which is the 4th step in the model. And we talk about that being an important principle with the facilitators and how to facilitate that. Some of the tools that we use with the CI teams are POP statement, which is the purpose of our team, the outcomes or deliverables that we will achieve during the continuous improvement week and how to go about delivering those, and then the process by which we're going to execute. And so we use this as a guide as facilitators use it as a tool to keep the team on target during the week, so that we don't stray off and try to solve world hunger, if you will. We stay on topic. If our topic is inspections or safety meetings or safety contacts, whatever it might be, we want to solve those problems during the week and not stray from that, and this tool is used to do that. The next tool, we have fault tree diagrams for every significant safety process. And so this is a problem-solving tool that the team uses to try to dive into what are our real problems in our culture. If a different organization decided to do X, well, how does that fit with us? And where's our flexibility to build it so it meets our needs and our concerns? So the fault trees are really used as a problem-solving tool, and we show facilitators how to use those. The next tool is a cause and effect diagram. And those of you who are familiar with the Ishikawa diagram will recognize the fish there. You notice the problem is at the head of the fish, and then the bones are all of the potential misses. And so another problem-solving tool, very easy to use to try to dive into what the participants on a CI team believe are the true causes of the problem. So we can move from complaint or cause of the problem to goal and how we're going to solve and what the solution is. The next piece is the step 1 of agenda of day 2. And so now you would see we'd be at a place where we could have the participants execute, and they have seen one of the CAP facilitators at this point deliver those key pieces that you just saw, and they're ready to begin to internalize this and determine how they would facilitate it, what they would say to a CI team if they were facilitating and teaching them how to do it. This is also where we start to review their toolkits. And as we move into the next page, here are some of the things that we include in a facilitator toolkit. There's a PowerPoint slide deck with speaker notes behind every one of those sections, from what's important to the organization to the 6 criteria for excellence to the accountability model. Each one of those key concepts has a PowerPoint slide or multiple slides and speaker notes behind those to assist the facilitators in making their thoughts, making their notes, identifying the key concepts that we want to present behind each one of those slides. We also have a facilitator guide instruction manual. We include electronic copies of video clips, examples of those 6 criteria, examples of the 4 steps of accountability, as well as icebreakers to maintain the fun factor during the week and so that the participants have fun and learn more. The physical materials include a workbook, facilitator workbook, a participant workbook, and a description of the difference, and then instructions on effective facilitator skills, and those are just general, how do I keep the group on target? What happens if I have a distractor in the room? Those types of things. As we move into day 3, they're ready to revise what they did on day 2, which is take all the materials and facilitate. And then they got feedback from each of their co-facilitators in the room, both positive and constructive, and now they're ready to refine that and deliver each one of those concepts back to the group. So that walks us through what it would take in a 3-day workshop, and I included a 3-day because the last one that we did with the Snohomish group turned out to be 3 days. There were 2 internal facilitators that were trained, and that was the agenda for that event. Now what I'd like to do is move into the results section of the presentation. I want to talk a little bit about the journey and sort of set the stage for the Snohomish participants on the phone so they can describe their story. Where they started was back in late 2009. Caterpillar at the time engaged with Snohomish in a safety perception survey. They found out through their assessment what their cultural norms were, and from that they developed a steering team. And the steering team began to choose topics for continuous improvement. They also began to choose participants on the CI teams. And they did several of these, of which you can see one on the screen there. This particular team was targeting positive safety observations. And let's bounce to the next one, Rachel. The next one was improving supervisor safety training. And I may not have these in the order in which they did them, but I'll let the Snohomish folks talk about the order in a few moments. Then they had one on safety goals. And I think they also had one on safety meetings, which I don't have a picture of that group in there. But the point behind this is they ran multiple continuous improvement teams that were facilitated by a Caterpillar facilitator. They learned the process. They saw some results, which you'll see on the next slide. You notice down the left-hand column, that was the original baseline survey. The average score on the bottom left-hand corner there is 71.9% positive. They redid the survey in late 2011, and that was post those 4 continuous improvement teams' work. So the teams ran between early 2010 and late 2011. And they resurveyed, and as you can see, they had a positive perception increase of about 4 percentage points. They've also had some improvement in their lagging indicators, which is our next slide here. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you can see that their OSHA recordables, their time lost, and they also measure hard cost are headed and trending down during that time frame. So there's a correlation between the upstream measures or the leading metrics and the lagging metrics here. At that point, they were ready to internalize this. They had seen Caterpillar facilitate teams. They had seen results from these teams. They had created a level of energy, positive energy with the employees. And their question to us was, how do we internalize this and do it ourselves? What's the exit strategy for a consultant, for Caterpillar being involved in this so that we can train our people. And so they began to make some decisions about how to do that. They have a safety steering team. I'll call it an executive safety team. And that team made some decisions about choosing the right types of facilitators. And I'll introduce them in just a moment. You'll get a chance to hear their story. I'm going to ask them some questions for you. And then they also talked about how many people they would include, what positions in the organization they would be in. One key note that I think you will find interesting about their selections, the first 2 rounds of facilitators included no one from the safety staff. These were all operational people in operational positions or administrative staff, customer service. They were not internal safety staff. And I'll let the Snohomish group talk a little bit about who those people were, what their titles are, and then certainly if you have questions, please feel free to engage in the process here, so you can tell us what they are at the end. We'll try to answer those. So now I'd like to move into asking some of the facilitators some questions here, and if I can get you guys out there in Everett to engage with me here. Greg, let me start with you. Can you tell me who the facilitators were and describe their job functions?
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we started out with David Underwood, who was a designing engineer, and his job, of course, was designing electrical systems for our system. So he was one, and that's kind of his background. Shane Mahoney, and he's also an engineer, design engineer. And he does the same type of work. We had John Willett, who is an IT person, so and that's kind of his background in the IT area, doing program development, all of that type of stuff. And we had Amy Murray, which is a customer service employee, union employee, who made up the 4th of our first group. And then our next group, we had Stephanie Strom, who's an administrative assistant in safety. And of course, as you know, Todd, she's been the backbone doing all of the documentation, scheduling, and all the stuff for the program since we've started. So she had a great background in kind of what we're doing and seeing these things going on. So that's her background. Cynthia Stewart, who's a customer service person as well. And I think that covers us.
Okay, great.
By the way, Todd, just so you know, David did get called to jury duty, so he's not on the call this morning.
Okay, that's fine. Couple more questions, Greg. Describe for the participants on the webinar how your organization chose the facilitators and what that process was through your steering team.
Okay, so we went out to the groups that are involved in our safety culture process and explained to them what we were trying to do and asked for volunteers out of the organization. We got a list of employees that volunteered, and then they went through a short interview with the steering team. And we had more volunteers than we actually selected for the process. They were looking at, obviously, coming into the interview, being able to at least speak and give us a little background about yourself so that we could get indication where they would be able to stand up in front of the group and be able to do the facilitation process. We were also looking at kind of diversity and where they come from. One of the things we were trying to do is when we have our own facilitators and send them into an area, a CI team to work, we were trying to send facilitators that were not part of that group so that they have less stake in the solving the problem. They're there to facilitate, not to drive and solve the problem. So we found by selecting facilitators across the district area, we were able to have that flexibility to move a pair of them in and out. And of course, lastly, it also gave us the flexibility when we get into the training pieces, obviously of being able to do a lot more with our own facilitators than, to be honest, having to coordinate with Caterpillar on getting you out with you guys' busy schedule.
You betcha. I have a question here, maybe steering a little bit different. Can you describe the participants on the steering team? I know you have a balance, but one of the questions that's coming in on the live chat is there's a perception that there's no field personnel on the steering team, and I know there are. Can you tell me how it's staffed, Greg?
Okay. So we originally put together the steering team out of our Joint Safety Committee. And at that time, our Joint Safety Committee consists of 5 appointed members, or elected members by the union, and 5 non-union members, most of them management level. So it's 5 and 5. That's how it started. Then as we evolved, we've had a couple go off and a couple go on. So basically we have both union and non-union representation on the steering team.
Great.
Let's see, we've got 3 linemen that are on the steering team, a couple customer service union members, I think right now, and then we've got a barrage of AGMs, managers that all participate in the steering team process. Remember, one of the key things of going on and moving on with the CI team's process, the outcome is to make sure that we have the support to support the team when they've come up with the ideas on how we can improve whatever they're working on at the time. So having those key members at the table, whereas when the CI team makes their presentation out, they don't have to wait. They get instant, yes, we're ready to go, and we start the process.
You bet. Thanks for that detail, Greg. I think that really helps to understand how you staff the decision-making team. I want to change gears a little bit here and ask one of the facilitators what their perception of the train-the-trainer process was before they arrived and what it is now. Was it different? I'd like to have one of them elaborate a little bit about their thoughts about what it was coming in and then how they see it now.
Hi, Todd. This is Stephanie. I'm not sure. Is Cindy on the line? Cynthia, are you there? No. Okay. Well, I think I'm the only one available to answer the question right now. I had a unique perspective because I was involved supporting the effort from the start. So I had a pretty good idea of the content and what the safety culture details and technical details were about, but I didn't really entrench into the facilitator process until I went through the interview process and was accepted to go to the training. Then you learn it's more than just the technical part of it. It really is about engaging people and working with them to come to a solution and making it their solution, not just the solution that they think management wants to hear. It's really a grassroots, getting the people involved, and that is really fun, and it's something I didn't see firsthand from a facilitator perspective until I actually became one.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that. It certainly is a lot of fun working with you guys on this as well, and I know you sort of had a heads up coming in and being as a part of one of the rapid improvement workshops, all of those before we got there. But I know it's a unique experience when you go through and you know you're going to have to present it afterwards. To that point, Greg or Stephanie, whichever would like to field this one, how have you used the training since the events? Can you describe either how you've personally used it or how one of the facilitators, I know David has had a chance to use it in topics other than safety, but how would you describe how you've used it since we've done the Train the Trainers?
Well, I can speak to how I've used it. I was trained in January of this year, and right after the training for Train the Trainer, we had a rollout of one of our continuous improvement team processes, and it was program-wide rollout, and it entailed like a 45-minute training session to all the different groups that were involved in the safety culture process. So there was about 30 separate training sessions that had to be conducted, and there's six facilitators that we've trained, but there's only a couple of them that were available to jump in immediately and do that. So I happened to be one of them, and so I got to jump right in and conduct a bunch of those trainings about that continuous improvement team. So there's about 16 sessions. So it was a lot of fun, and the skills definitely came in handy. I used them right away and really got to good with it, and so by the 16th one, I was doing just a great job. I was up there having a great time.
I'll give you a big woo-hoo on that one. What advice would you give to anybody considering one of these Train the Trainer processes?
Well, I think that you have to want it. There's no question about it. If you're vacillating and not sure if you think it's something for you, I think that you really need to decide that before you go in. And I think that the steering team that we have, it's kind of got it's not top heavy, but there are a couple high level people on that steering team. So whatever anybody can do to make sure that they're comfortable around diverse groups of people that represent all levels of the organization is definitely going to help them be more successful getting through the interview and getting accepted to be trained and become a facilitator.
Great. Well, a couple of follow-up questions here, Steph and Greg. What was the best thing, the highlight in your mind, if you were to identify one thing, the highlight of the Train the Trainer event? And conversely, what one thing would you change or do differently to improve it if you had it to do over again?
Boy, it was fun few days. I'm trying to think highlights. I really like the process. I love the process that you guys go through, and I'm not sure, Todd, if it's something that you've developed, but I love how you not only are you up there and practicing and delivering these skills, but you're also evaluating the other people in the room. So when you take it from an evaluator perspective and not only just a presenter perspective, it really helps you fine-tune what it is you're trying to accomplish and the skills you're trying to develop and what it takes to deliver that successfully. So that was kind of a highlight for me, being able to not only present but evaluate as well. I'm not sure about a change. Maybe.
Todd, I'll talk a little bit. I mean, one of the changes that I think that our facilitators really appreciated was the latest version of the information you provide to them to support the process. So if you remember early on, they had to take a lot of notes. The updating you've done to the presentation, the facilitators' guide notes has really been a plus. They really appreciated that. So I think that's been a real plus since we got started. Even though it was good when we started, it's just made it better and easier for them as they do their facilitation process. Just a couple other things since David's not here. Big picture, one of the things that, as we entrench this within the organization, you need to develop more and more people that clearly understand what's going on. And I know Chris, our AGM, is looking at this as being a very plus skill when he's looking for people who are interested in moving up within the organization. So I can tell you, if David was here, he could probably tell you that this didn't hurt him at all, becoming a facilitator about the time when a job opening came up for a manager for him, and he was successful getting that job. Now, I don't know, it might not have made any difference, but I can tell you for sure, Chris sure appreciated having those skills as he develops the management team for the future. The other thing was that quickly people started to see that the CI process, the process which you go through to define the problem and come out with a solution, they were saying, wow, we can use this for other problems that we're dealing with, just not safety-related problems. So David was asked to facilitate a couple other CI processes or Kaizen processes, which were not safety related. So a lot of our people are starting to learn the process and being able to use that in other applications within the organization.
Well, and add to that, David's not the only one that has had good professional success related on after he became trained. Amy has moved up, and Shane they have both moved up in positions at the district.
Great, and I appreciate the specifics, especially there with some of the outside topics, guys. I think that's important. That the train the trainer process is about continuous improvement. We apply it to safety processes, but it can be applied to any process, and David is living proof of how that works in doing that. So I appreciate you sharing that. As you think about your journey, a couple of other follow-up questions that I think would be important to the participants on the webinar. How many CI teams, and I tried to hit on this, but I'm not sure exactly how many you've run, how many continuous improvement teams did we help you facilitate before the steering team decided that it was time to internalize this?
Three teams.
Okay. And the reason for that question, Greg, is many times we have customers who will ask us, before even running one of the CI teams, can you come in and do a train the trainer? Could you see it being different if you were running a train the trainer before having run any teams?
Yes, I don't think we would have been as successful. I think part of making that change is actually needing that third party to come in and help us get started. Build the trust with our employees who are part of the CI teams. Know that that's what your role is there, not to guide or direct the team, is to find out what the core issues are, come up with ideas on improving the process, and building that trust with them along with our organization to move forward. So to start out with our own facilitators, I think it would have still looked too much like, top-down management type process to change the culture. And that's one of the things we're trying to do, is move to putting the face of our rank and file leading the safety culture change process, not upper management.
Well, and I don't think we're even ready to go full on without the support of CAT now anyways. I mean, I think it'd be a gradual adjustment to not have you guys even involved in our CI teams, and we're on our third or fourth year, so that's important.
Well, I appreciate the kudos there, but I want to give you guys credit for internalizing that. We don't have all of our customers who are willing to step up and internalize those CI teams, which is the most challenging part of the process, and so I appreciate you being willing to share your story today. Is there anything else that, Greg, Stephanie, that you can think of that might be important about your process that I didn't ask you about today, that you think somebody on the webinar might be thinking, or a question that they might be considering?
Well, one of the things that came up was talking about how the facilitators are not safety staff or not necessarily management staff. They may be management now after a couple of years of training, and I think it's really important, because I think you can see the perception of the process if it's done by people who are perceived as top down or as coming from safety. And I know I'm involved in safety, but I'm not a safety authority. I'm a support person, and I know that probably took a lot of the steering team. They had to maybe think twice about whether I should be a facilitator or not. But I think that since I'm not a safety authority, it was easier for them to accept me as a facilitator. But as I see now, as we have some challenging CI teams, the more involvement of diverse group people than just the people who are entrenched in safety is going to make it more successful.
You bet, Stephanie, and I appreciate you telling your story from your chair and your position in the organization. It's unique wherever we go. One of the things I think is really unique about yours is that you you don't have any full-time safety professionals in the safety manager role as a part of your participants. It's not that they couldn't do that, but I think Greg made a great point earlier. You want to try to remove any bias about leading towards a conclusion. And I think it's great that you have a diversified staff of facilitators now where, regardless of where the issue is, you can pick the right person to go in and be independent in facilitating the event. So that's a great point.
I think the other last comment, unless there's other questions, we thought a good program before we started this process, but we just couldn't get these accident rates down. And it wasn't until we we had great training, great tools, great equipment, great people, but we were still struggling with the same problems year after year. So once we understood the safety culture change process and grabbed onto that, we realized that was the missing piece in our toolbox to move us forward, to really get us to where we need to be world-class for the future. We understand, and I think it's important for people out there to understand that this takes a long time. You didn't get here overnight. You're not going to get out of this overnight. You have to be consistent. Your people have to understand it's not going away. Your management group has to buy in that this is a long-term process if you really want to make the change and become world-class.
Great point, Greg, and I want to thank you and Stephanie for being willing to tell your story today, and I know you're still on the journey for improvement. I know it took some time out of your schedule to do this today, but I hope that others can benefit from your journey and your story. So thank you guys so much for being willing to do this for us today, and we're going to let Rachel wrap things up for us here.
Okay, so thank you everybody for attending. As you can see on the screen now, Abby Rhodes is our Marketing Communications Manager, and her contact information is on the screen. So if you have any additional interest or questions related to our services, please feel free to contact Abby directly. Just as a reminder, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will be sending an email within the next day or so with a link to the recording of this webinar, so you'll be able to see all of the presentation slides as well as all of the audio and conversation that accompanies it. So thank you very, very much for attending today. We hope you found it beneficial, and hopefully you'll join next month. Thanks a lot.